Movie remakes and sequels. There are phrases that always get people riled up. Every time we get news of a new remake or reboot being in the works, it's always met with this collective groan about how unnecessary it is and how Hollywood is dying. You know, the usual stuff. Many cite the movie industry's increasingly frequent output of remakes, reboots, and sequels of existing properties as a sign of the end of times and the death of creativity and artistic integrity and all that. But let me just show you something, okay? Original movie, Lion King 2019. Yeah, but I think it's really interesting how they bring with them this negative connotation now, and I really wanted to look into why it is that people have come to hate them so much, and yet why they continue to be so profitable regardless. This abundance of remakes and sequels is not exactly a new thing either, as much as it feels like it is. Redoing films has been around for like literally forever, and I honestly doubted this until I started looking into it myself and learned that there are a lot more of these things than I thought. I'm obviously not saying that original works can't still be successful, far from it in fact. The Emoji Movie made $200 million, but it's clear that they're losing out to the popularity of existing franchises. If you go and Google like upcoming movies or something, nearly every single one of them will be something based on an already existing property. Jurassic World 3, The Batman, Spider-Man 3 2, The Kingsman prequel, Thor 4, Uncharted, The Matrix 4, a Resident Evil reboot, Top Gun 2, and Mission Impossible 7. And I am excited about all of these. And seeing this gave me a realization about all of the movies I've actually gone out and seen this year. Reboot, game adaptation, franchise film, sequel, franchise film, sequel, don't want to talk about it. Wow, that's embarrassing. And the only ones that don't fit this criteria are the ones where I've already been familiar with the people involved. Nobody has Bob Odenkirk in it, Free Guy has Ryan Reynolds, Boss Level I was dragged along to by my friends so it doesn't count, and Old I just knew would be hilarious. Oh no, never mind, there's one. The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. I have seen one original movie this year purely based on the plot sounding cool to me. Fuck yeah, I'm contributing to the movie industry. But that wasn't at the cinema though. So I don't think this all means that Hollywood is incapable of being creative anymore. I think it's just a sign of what people want to watch. We gotta really sit down and consider what it is that gets people to go and see a movie. Yes, I am talking about you. Do I really want to pay actual human dollars to go all the way to the cinema to watch a lovingly crafted and visually gorgeous adaptation of a world-renowned musical? Or would I rather go see this movie instead because it has Tom Holland in it? And there does exist a fairly easy solution to having properties remade and recycled all the time. And that is to stop going to see them. But I'm definitely not going to do that. So people I think are just generally very fond of the familiar. Why do you think people keep going to McDonald's even though we all know the food sucks and it's really bad for you? Because I don't mind the chicken McNuggies, okay? It doesn't mean that it'll be good, but at least you know exactly what you're getting. Like Adam Sandler movies. I honestly don't think this is a case where you can entirely blame studios for making the same shit again when people are obviously paying to see the same shit again. Because you do notice that if these things even slightly underperform, they will literally never touch them again. I'd say most of the time you only ever hear about remakes in a bad light since they don't really have a very good track record. Usually the only time you ever hear about them in a good way is when you didn't even know they were ones. Movies like Scarface, The Bourne Identity, The Departed, The Thing, sort of, The Fly, Ocean's 11, and The Wizard of Oz even. I didn't even know most of these were remakes before I started writing this, so there you go, point proven. Though, as a lot of people are keen to point out as a defense against remakes, it's not like them existing erases the original in any way. You can still watch it, and that is absolutely true and very warranted. But you see, now I have to specify which of the two I'm talking about because they always have the same fucking name. Remaking things is hardly just a movie thing though. Video game remakes provide much more blatant reasoning for their existence, considering the advancements in graphics that have been achieved in such an incredibly short amount of time, meaning they're able to take older games and make them not look like this. Which really does make you wonder if in another 15 years or so, they'll remake them again. The reason for these existing is pretty clear, but when it comes to movies, the main question you have to answer is, why? Although believe me, some of them still don't answer that. For example, they made a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho in 1998 with the only advantage being that it's in color now, which has to be the biggest why of all time. I'm not saying it's not impressive, but why? A cool idea that people often raise when the topic of remakes is brought up is instead of redoing something that was beloved and successful, since it will inevitably just be worse, why not remake less fondly remembered movies instead? This is why. Maybe for some absolutely deranged reason you wanted to change the medium, like turning an animated movie into a live-action adaptation. Ah, fuck, here we go. As we all know, Disney seems absolutely hell-bent on turning every single one of their beloved animated classics into these live-action versions with Will Smith. I don't really have a strong opinion on these because I've only seen 2 of them, but I'm fairly certain that anybody you ask will still tell you the original was their preferred version. And yet, obviously, someone is seeing them anyway. $1.6 billion. for this. On most occasions, changes to the story will be made to make it stand out from the original, which also gets people upset because then they'll insist that there was nothing wrong with the original in the first place. There's just no winning, huh? The 1990 Night of the Living Dead remake had a major change in the character of Barbara, who in the original has the achievement of being the single most annoying character in cinema history, whereas in the remake, they significantly revamped her character to make her actually capable of doing something other than screaming. The Italian Job remake isn't even set in Italy for 99% of the film, and aside from the Mini Coopers and shared character names, I literally don't think these movies have anything to do with each other. And though they're still being made every now and then, I think we're seeing the trend shifting to making follow-ups to older movies, whether they were needed or not. That's right, it's time for Hollywood's favorite word, sequels. I don't want to talk about these for too long because I feel like there's an entire other video on here, but let's just say that making fun of sequels has been around for like ages. But I have to admit, I really like them. I know, I'm sorry. I'm definitely not saying there weren't some very unnecessary ones made at the request of absolutely nobody, but if you make a sequel to a movie I like, I will absolutely be there for it. I don't care if they're nostalgia baiting, there is something really uplifting to me about seeing characters get older and still getting to go on cool adventures and shit. I'm totally gonna be that cool when I'm 50. Sequels generally, I think, can be a bit harder to forgive when you don't like them, since they're much more difficult to separate from the original film given that it's supposed to be a continuation. And I was going to say that for the most part, I don't usually mind when they make unnecessary sequels, but then I remember that Pacific Rim Uprising happened. If I just pretend that it doesn't exist for long enough, hopefully it'll just go away. But I have no idea what people are talking about because we definitely needed all of these. When they're not Independence Day resurgence though, I honestly prefer a continuation where they can have a brand new cast and ideas, but still acknowledge previous events, instead of just starting fresh and doing a worse version of something that's already been done. My favorite part though is when the remakes start getting sequels themselves, and then it just starts getting really convoluted because now there are 3 Halloween 2s. Going back to remakes, sometimes you'd think they'd stop with the first one, but then sometimes they're like, okay, that first remake wasn't good enough, we gotta do another one. Horror movies are the best at this. Genuinely, if there's any iconic horror you can think of, I guarantee you there's at least 2 of them. Like Carrie, which they apparently can't stop remaking. How have they made Freaky Friday 4 times? One of the more practical applications for remakes is for foreign films. On paper, at least. What makes sense in one country may not be understandable in another. Although this is not usually the real reason they adapt them, it's actually just because an annoyingly large amount of people just refuse to read things. You take Train to Busan, which is like one of my favorite movies ever. I wouldn't say there's anything in this film that isn't easily accessible and understandable to anyone. Basically, you don't have to live in South Korea to enjoy it. Other fun cases are the 2013 American Oldboy or the 1998 Godzilla movie. Everyone loves those, right? It goes both ways though. Sometimes there are foreign remakes of American movies that continue the trend of being extremely unnecessary. Did you know that there is an Indian version of Reservoir Dogs? Because I didn't until 5 minutes ago. Actually, there's an Indian version of everything. Holy shit. They've got their own Nightmare on Elm Street and Child's Play and even It, which apparently was a show that went on for 52 episodes. Oh my god, this is amazing. I don't think I'm ever going to understand this reluctance people have to just watch something in a different language. Power Rangers Samurai refilming every Samurai Sentai episode just so that kids don't have to find out that Japan exists is very silly. There's even a Colombian version of Breaking Bad called Metastasis that effectively recreates the entire show, essentially shot for shot, but like really poorly. Like, why would you go to all this effort? I have a really great idea that can save you guys like 62 episodes worth of effort. You ready? I thought I'd now take the time to read to you some upcoming remakes, reboots, and sequels. There is a live-action version of Akira headed by Taika Waititi that has been in development for like 86 years. A Big Trouble in Little China sequel is being worked on with The Rock as the lead. That sounds awesome. In spite of how much everybody absolutely loved it, they're still going ahead with a sequel to Netflix's Death Note movie. Shrek 5 is supposedly going to be a reboot of the series, and that's literally all we know about it. There's another RoboCop, another Predator, another Indiana Jones, another Rocky again. Jesus Christ. Speaking of, somehow they are doing a sequel to The Passion of the Christ, which I cannot wait to see how the hell they're gonna pull that off. There have been talks for Friday the 13th and a Nightmare on Elm Street to be remade again, thanks in part to the success of the pseudo Halloween reboot. They're doing a new Home Alone on Disney Plus and a new Night at the Museum as well, and a live-action Your Name movie that will be produced by J.J. Abrams. There's gonna be a new Starship Troopers and a remake of The Birds and a new Escape from I can't wait to hear what Hollywood thinks of this original screenplay I wrote. Look, remakes and sequels really aren't going anywhere anytime soon, as long as people continue to flock to the cinemas to go and see them. like me. And no matter how upset people get about them, I don't think that's going to change. Anyway, those were my very strange thoughts about the state of the movie industry. I know a lot of people are really upset about it, which I honestly think is totally fine, but I think the main takeaway here is just to go out and support some original films. I think they really need it right now.